Call Government Order of the Day number 4.
Television New Zealand Amendment Bill, first reading.
Speaker.
Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this Television New Zealand Amendment Bill. Before I get going on the substance of the bill, I'd like to bring people's attention back to several weeks ago when we were debating this, and I'd like to take this opportunity to enlighten the opposition spokesperson for broadcasting once again. I have previously told Mr. Burns that the charter money never funded wonderful programs like Tangata Pacifica, Attitude, Asia Down Under. I'd also like to bring to the House's attention that before the Charter, there was wonderful local content. Before the Charter was introduced in 2003, we had great local content. Members opposite, I think it was Mr. Mallard, who mentioned New Zealand on screen when we were debating this bill a few weeks ago, that some fabulous content from the bygone era were shown. All created before the Charter and all local content brought to the viewers via TVNZ, mostly before it was mandated by a Charter to do so. I'm slightly embarrassed for Mr. Burns, actually, sir, that he doesn't really know his portfolio area well, that he makes sweeping statements and assumptions as he did a couple of weeks ago. Perhaps he should study his portfolio area more so he understands that the removal of the Charter doesn't mean local content disappears. If his theory is right, then there should have been a huge increase in local content when the Charter was introduced in 2003. But did it? I don't believe it has. In my previous life as a television content maker, I must say I was very excited when the Charter was introduced. Surely the Charter would mean minority programs, special interest programs, would get more attention from the broadcaster. And the special interest program makers who work so very hard to make sure we deliver great programs at a very cost-effective way would surely get more funding. That never really happened. Those special interest programs, which often make some of the best documentaries in their often considered ghetto time slot, never really benefited from the Charter money. Many people spoke about the public service broadcasting function of TVNZ, sir. I believe TVNZ has served that function before the Charter was imposed upon them in 2003. It didn't improve the situation with the Charter. By removing the Charter obligation, it just gives TVNZ the opportunity to concentrate on what they know best, to make television programs that are entertaining, enjoyable and watchable by as many people as possible. What's the use of making television program that no one watches, purely because it is mandated to do so by a statute? Some members have mentioned local content quota. Sure, as content creators, I'm sure producers would love the idea of having quotas initially. But filling a quota is not about choosing the best. It's not an endorsement that the programs we have are entertaining or even good television. I wonder where Peter Jackson and Richard Taylor of Weta Digital would be if we put quotas on New Zealand films. Competition creates better content. The desire to compete with the best in the world has made those two men the leaders in their field, and I salute them. If we were to translate the quota debate onto sports, which New Zealanders are passionate about, it would be a case of why have a Rugby World Cup? Why compete with the best of the world? Why compete at the Olympics? Just have a quota of New Zealand athletes and compete in New Zealand competition only. Don't mind the world or who the best in the world are. How uninspiring. I don't believe that the number 8 wire mentality that we all admire and brag about, that is New Zealand, should manifest itself in a quota on television content. Ernest Rutherford did it, so did Edmund Hillary, both without a quota. Mr. Speaker, in my maiden speech, I spoke about the importance of local content, that I had concerns for our children who are more exposed to overseas content than local ones, that our children's notion of who they are in the world must first be rooted and supported by a firm Kiwi identity, and that in this digital age, our children's heroes and role models are often celebrities they see on television or read about on the internet. I support local content, don't get me wrong, I definitely support local content. How could I not? Having worked for Television New Zealand, having worked for 15 years as a television program maker, I am passionate about New Zealand content. and special interest programs like Attitude that bring stories about people with disabilities, Tangata Pacifica, stories about people of the Pacific, and Asia Down Under about New Zealand of Asian descent have their place as in mainstream television doesn't provide that platform. Having said that, these programs did not benefit from the Charter, and they were established long before the Charter was dreamed up. So that brings me to the bill. This bill amends the Television New Zealand Act of 2003 in 3 ways: to replace the TVNZ Charter with a more generic statutory requirements, 2, to amend the prohibition on ministerial direction to TVNZ to cover multiple platforms instead of just a conventional television broadcast, including web-based content, and 3, to enable the screening of pre-1989 TVNZ archive works. This government is honouring our election promise to replace the current TVNZ Charter, to leave TVNZ free to determine its own priorities by being less prescriptive in its functions. I remember someone a couple of weeks ago mentioning Sky TV, I think it was. The reason I bring up Sky TV is because Sky TV isn't mandated by Charter to make any local content. It's purely a commercially driven broadcaster, a pay TV station, and yet they make local content. Why is that? That's because their viewers demand it. If there's no demand, there won't be any local content on Sky. Viewers are the driving force behind content. I've heard some people balk at the idea that we had so much reality TV a few years ago. That's because there was a thirst for those types of programs by the viewership. Television program commissions would be irresponsible if they commissioned documentaries which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if no one watched them. So instead, they commissioned reality TV.
Order. Time has come for me to leave the chair, so the debate is interrupted.